Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about trendy technology and a perspective that I think that we all kind of need to acknowledge is, or that I hope at least we can all agree on, is infecting our world a little bit. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about how things are in, well, let's talk about medicine. Now, arguably, programming and medicine have one particular thing in common. And I think this is a really big one for the most part. And that is that these two professions, although they are vastly different in many ways, the one thing that really ties them both together is that they are the sort of profession where things are continuously changing. As a up-to-date modern-day doctor, you kind of have to realize that you are in a position where you may actually need to be updated on a lot of different practices within medicine. There are new types of drugs coming out, there are new practices, there are new laws, there are all kinds of things that are changing in your working environment. And the same thing goes for programmers. Programmers have a very similar type of situation. Now, depending on what type of doctor you are or what type of programmer and so forth you are, these things vary in terms of speed. But the one constant is that there's always something changing and you need to keep yourself updated. Now, so if we have this in the back of our heads to start off with, here's one thing that I think is very different about, or rather, there are multiple things that are different between these two professions, but I think for the context of our little discussion here, I think the one that we're going to focus on is practices. You see, in programming, it is today, it didn't used to be the case, but today we are swarmed by different practices, different tools, and we have what I like to call programming trends. It used to be the case that everything was about object-oriented programming, and that trend kind of came from the procedural programming pattern. People got fed up with that, so we came into object-oriented programming. Today, the most trendy thing around is functional programming. Who knows what it's going to be next year? And although it's a great deal of fun for us it kind of depends, really. Some programmers I know are very sick and tired, and for good reason. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. And people like myself who are very engaged and love that activity think it's great to have all of this stuff. But as things often go, with age comes insight. And that's the insight I'm going to share with you, because all that movement and all that changing and so forth has a really large consequence. You may have heard that there used to be a time when everybody was working in roughly the same 2 or 3 languages, and everything was fairly consistent because the ecosystem wasn't all that diverse. You had established best practices, and a lot of the books you may have read on programming best practices, they weren't written today. They were written 10 years ago, when these practices, or rather when I would argue, when there was a time where writing good software was more important than trendy tools. And you kind of had a higher level of consistency and a deeper professional understanding of the tool you were working in because you had a smaller set of tools. Now, let's tie that back into being a doctor, because think of it, or rather I hope that this makes sense to you. What if medicine worked the same way as programming did? What if your doctor in a single day would treat different patients in different ways, using different techniques to treat the same type of illness? What if your doctor was very liberal with the way that they solved medical problems on your behalf? That would be really dangerous and a really bad practice for a lot of I think we can all agree that when it comes to medicine and people's health and their lives, being liberal and being trendy isn't really a good bet. Being consistent, being sure that something works, even if it's not the most hip thing around, is better than taking risks with other people's lives. Now let's tie that into programming. That's not the way I see things moving. This is not the way that our world works. Because today, it depending kind of on where you are and where you work, you'll find that it's actually much more common to have the opposite happen, where trendy technology and practices and movement is the norm. And that, in my opinion, is the same type of problem that I was describing for the doctors, where I see a lot of companies take risk with their customers and their technologies and their product and their whatever you want to call it, because they are in this mindset that trendy technology and so forth is the norm and it's the way that things should work. And although I think that it's a great idea to have progression, innovation, and all of these things, I find it a little bit disturbing that we reinvent or virtually diversify solutions to problems that have already been solved a long time ago. And I argue that the reason why we do this is because we are bored. That's what I think. I know myself that's if I have anything to say about my own involvement in this problem, that's the main reason. We get bored. Why do programmers pick a fancy technique to solve something or so forth? Because they want to play around with stuff. And I can't even believe that I'm saying this, but I argue that a lot of solutions and a lot of problems and projects and companies have this obsession with trendy tech, partly because they themselves are in this mindset that they have forgotten their purpose. Because it's not about you. It's not about what you want. It's not about what you need, unfortunately. It's about building something. Nowhere else, or very few professions, have the type of luxury where the people in that profession can pick and choose whatever tool they want and do whatever they want. Most professions have an established way of working, strict standards, that sort of thing, because it's the focus for that profession is to deliver value to the customer, or say with doctors to help somebody with their health issues. It's not about the doctor and their preferred way of working. It is about the patient. That's not true for programming now, is it? And although I can find that it's a bittersweet thing, because I know that if I was forced to only adhere to, if it was the other way around, it would be very boring for us programmers to be forced to work in that manner. And some companies actually have this as a practice. And although I wouldn't find that's all that interesting for myself, I can see the value, and I actually think that it's probably the way that things should work. So I'd like us to end on this thought I've had. I wonder when it happened. And I think it has to do, honestly, with the enormous amount of scarcity we have in this profession. Because if you think about trendy technology is like a beautiful woman or an amazing car or something. It sells. Trendy tech sells. And not just to your customers, to the people you are hiring. How do you get the best programmers in the world? You sell them that you have trendy technology, a good working environment, that sort of thing. And I think that's what happened. I think we are obsessed with all these trendy tools because we are more focused on hiring professional programmers and having the type of people that are extremely good at what we do in the company. And I think that's, honest to God, I think that's what's happened. I think that the scarcity of programmers has become so enormous that companies get the idea of using trendy technology in order to actually recruit people. Look at Google, for example. Nobody does it better than Google when it comes to trendy technology and a good working, or rather selling the idea that they have a good working environment. Because good programmers are scarce. So if you think about it, since trendy technology is a big subject for a lot of really skilled programmers, it makes a lot of sense, right, to push these sort of things. But it also creates the spiral, as I was saying, where we get away from the thing that we are actually supposed to be doing. And that's where I'm going to leave you. When in the world did it become more important to use trendy tools and fancy techniques, even though there are already established good practices that have been proven for a long time, than shipping value to your customers? Because trust me, I would never visit a doctor that was liberal with my health. So why are we programmers liberal with our customers' products?